Good evening. All right, troubled over growing old. Just one note for this class. This is the last lesson in the book. So Jesse's doing a review next Wednesday. He does have a list of questions. All of these questions are in the book, so this just kind of tells you which question in each lesson he's going to focus on. So this handout is in the back. This is also on the OneDrive. So if you're going to be in town next week, make sure you have this so you'll be prepared. Lord willing, we'll actually get to the question for lesson 12 tonight, but maybe not. We'll see how far we get with talking about getting old. Whenever he asked me to teach this class and I saw what the lesson was, I was like, man, why did I get this one? I don't know if I should take that as a compliment or I don't know exactly how to take that. So what age is old? 92. All right, this must be some joke because Brent and Melissa were really, really quick to answer that. 60?
No, not 60.
Used to be 60. So how old is old? At what age do you hit, I'm old now?
No, you're not old. And I'm not old.
Okay. So I'm 42 and I'm not old.
I'm 77.
She's 77. She's not old yet.
I think 20 years older than you is what's old. Because your kids, they'll say 30 is old. I would say 40 is not old. And Shirley says 70 is not old. 20 years older would be old.
Norm?
Someone once said, "You'll know it when you see it."
Maybe you'll know it when you feel it. Francis?
My expression is I'm not old, I'm getting older.
Okay. Jeff? Did you have your hand up? Yeah, I'll say your hand go up. Daniel?
Two things. I teased my friend today because he's a Christian. He turned 50, and I texted him and I said, "Happy birthday, old man." So
He's 50 to Daniel.
And secondly, in my field, in the field that I work, old or geriatric is considered 65 and older. So just.
Okay. All right, clinically then it's 65. Bob?
I felt pretty good till I was 70. Then I went downhill from there.
I think that the old adage that age is just a number, I think that there is some truth to that. So just because I know my perspective has changed in my 42 years, I thought I would quiz my kids and ask them what they felt like old was. And then I made it a little bit more personal, and I said, who at our congregation is old? So I'm not going to divulge all of the information. I don't want anybody looking down on my kids for any reason. I will tell you that I'm asking about different ones, and I'll use Norm as an example. And so they were stuck on Mr. Norm, and I said, do you know how old Mr. Norm is? And I think Wyatt said 50, maybe 50-something. I said, no. So Norm, tell us how old you are. 70. All right, I was wrong. I said 75. I'm close. So I do think that age, it is just a number. But obviously, I think Francis said it correctly. We are all getting older. Every day we're getting older. I think that some of the things that we're actually going to talk about that go along with getting old are things that younger people experience. One of them that we'll talk about is the infirmities that we get. Well, my sister is 39. She's not even 40, and she just had hip replacement surgery just a couple of months ago. So, I mean, we all at different ages can go through different things that can cause us to have some of the same problems, but typically these will be things that we notice more as we get old. So I just did a quick search, and according to the World Health Organization, most of the developed countries within the world view 60 as the age of, okay, now you're old. According to the Social Security Administration, it's 65. And then I had read this. It says a new study by U.S. Trust has found that perceptions of the onset of old age vary widely among different generations. And I think this is very true. So millennials, for example, say that you are old once you turn 59. Gen Xers, on the other hand, hold a slightly more generous view, saying that old age begins at 65, while it comes to boomers and the silent generation, both agree that you're not really old until you hit age 73. So nobody knows. That's the point. So if you'll notice in your lesson books on page 66, oh, go ahead, Jesse. You got that one. Yep. You make it to 969, you're old. You're 10 years older than 73, so you're probably officially old, Mr. Ray.
I'm feeling it.
On page 66, Brother Adam starts off by saying, the Bible addresses the needs of people in every stage of life. In Titus 2, verses 1 through 6, Paul gave instructions for aged men, aged women, and young men. Each age has its own special challenges, and growing older has its share. One wag said, it is not so bad to get old, it's just inconvenient sometimes. But if the normal course of life continues, we shall grow old. As people turn from the middle years of life to face the sunset, they become aware that their time is shorter and respond in different ways. Some make vain attempts to recapture youth and give credence to the old saying that there is no fool like an old fool. Some become gloomy and pessimistic, interspersed with bitterness. Some become selfish and overly demanding of attention and make life hard for their families. Some become sharply critical of nearly everybody and everything. But some stay young at heart, interested in life to the very end, and as active as they are able to be. These truly adorn the golden years with grace. So it talks about the idea that old age is something that is to be honored. So go ahead and open up your Bibles and turn over to Proverbs chapter 16, verse 31. We'll start here with Gil, if you'll grab Proverbs 16, 31, and then Papa John, if you'll grab Proverbs 20 and verse 29. Andy, you're in front of Papa John. Andy, you get Proverbs 20, 29. Miss Beverly, if you'll get Leviticus 19, 32, and then Papa John, Job 12, 12.
Proverbs 16:31. The silver-haired head is a crown of glory if it is found in the way of righteousness.
Andy, you got Proverbs 20, 29.
Okay, yeah. The glory of young men is their strength, and the splendor of old men is their gray head.
What was the Leviticus 1:19 was?
1932.
You shall rise before the gray-headed and honor the presence of an old man and fear your God. I am the Lord.
Ms. Beverly, if you want to go ahead and get Job 12, 12.
Wisdom is with the aged, and understanding in length of days.
All right. So in the New American Standard Translation in Proverbs 20 and verse 29, it says there that the honor of old men is the gray hair. So honor is something that we see very clearly throughout the Bible that is to be given to those that are older. And what comes with this particular honor? In the book, it mentions that it gives great responsibility to those that are older to actually be accepting of this honor. So how do we get to the point where we deserve this honor? Is it just simply because we've reached the age of 65 or 50 or 73 or whatever it is? Norm?
Learn wisdom. The last one there, Job 12:12, talks about wisdom. So that should be something that each of us should be doing and garnering as we go along, and it should be something that's evident at the older age.
Okay. So does wisdom automatically come just because you have hair that starts turning gray? Experience? Sometimes I think gray hair comes from stress, not from wisdom. And does this also include gray beards and not necessarily just gray hair? Wherever. So, Jesse, if you will read 1 Timothy 5, 1 through 2.
Do not sharply rebuke
an older man, but rather appeal to him as a father, to the younger men as brothers, to the older women as mothers, and the younger women as sisters, in all purity.
So what's another word that we could use as far as how the younger should treat the older?
My grandmother always said, when anybody said she was old, she says, as I am, as you are, I used to be, as I am, you will be.
It's a good way to put it. Say that again.
As you are, I used to be, as I am, you will be.
All right, so I think I heard it from somebody over here, the word respect. And I think that this is something that we are sorely lacking in today's society. And I think regardless of maybe someone that maybe not as deserving of honor, maybe because they haven't displayed a lot of wisdom, you definitely should be showing respect for all of those that are older than you. And that is something that we should be making sure that we are teaching our children. So I don't think I have this down. He listed it in the book. 1 Timothy 4:12. Lena, if you could read that.
That no one despise your youth, but be an example to the believer in word and conduct, in love and spirit, faith and purity.
All right, so, and I'll get you in just a second. So what could be a potential problem or a downfall with someone that is older and they walk around with this attitude of, you should respect me, you should honor me? What can be the downside of that?
Have this idea of I know best, or I'm the source of wisdom, and so everyone should listen to me on everything, and I can't learn, or I can't, be taught. I'm teaching you, and that can be very off-putting to deal with that sort of attitude.
All right, Norm.
Part of the purpose of wisdom is to impart it somewhere. If you just die with it does nobody any good. So unless you're mentoring, unless you're turning that and investing that wisdom in those that are younger than you, you are not doing the right thing.
Okay. Marissa?
The idea of respect, or the instruction to respect your elders, is predicated on the expectation that the elders will be worthy of respect. Not everybody acts in a way that is worthy of respect.
Very true. So one of the things that I have noticed as I have gotten older is, I've noticed it especially over the last couple of years, I have a much harder time relating to the younger generation. And so I think that I can already see this being a pitfall of mine, that, okay, I don't get you at all, and I'm definitely not going to listen to anything that you say. And I think that is a trap that we can fall into as we get older, just like Daniel talked about. We can have this mindset, I'm older, I've got more experience, I'm much wiser than you, so why would I listen to what you have to say? And yet here Paul is telling Timothy, don't let anybody despise your youth. You can still have wisdom. You can still show knowledge even at a younger age. And so just because you're older doesn't mean that you can despise those that are younger. Jeff?
Back to that last slide, it's kind of, it's amazing how Satan works, right? This is what God says about old age. That's straight from God. Satan works on the opposite premise here in our great culture of America. You mentioned the culture. It's the culture. It's the American way. Everywhere you turn, youth is exalted, and old age is nothing about diminished capacity, weakness, infirmities. You're just not good for nothing anymore. We got to put you in the old folks' home. It just goes. That's what Satan has done. He has flipped it on its ear, and that's what American society values. It's all about youth and everything else. It's truly sad.
Yeah. And I think that will add to the next topic that we'll talk about with the trials and the temptations of the sunset years. And some of that is just made worse because of the way that society has started to view old versus young. So, question number 1, why is old age to be honored? Norm?
Designed it that way.
Okay. Jesse?
I was out in the marketplace today, like I always am, and an older man walked next to me. And again, you can't tell the difference between 50 and 70. Once but he was wearing a World War II veteran hat, and you see less and less and less of those, And I'd hold the door locked for anybody if they were coming through when I was coming through, but I certainly just, stepped aside and nodded my head. Because it has to do with what a person has endured or persevered, what they have learned from that experience. And like he said, you want to be able to impart that, And there's just something to be said for that.
Definitely. Did I see another hand? So this is, obviously God said that we should, but I think that the reason is in God's wisdom. It's kind of like what Jesse is talking about. They have these experiences that those of us that are younger have never had. And so if you're smart, then you're going to sit down, you're going to listen to the experiences they've gone through, both good and bad, and you're going to learn from those things. And so the older should be honored. Question number 2, how is such honor shown? So the older people should be honored, but how do we show them honor?
Listen to their advice,
Okay.
if it's good advice.
Yeah. I'd be willing to say you can listen if it ain't good advice. You still need to be respectful and listen. And then maybe you can walk away from it and maybe decide yourself, okay, maybe that wasn't the best advice, but I'm very thankful that they were willing to give it. Marissa?
She took mine.
Daniel?
Is that what they call it?
Deference?
Yeah.
You defer to the... Yeah. Daniel?
It's important to anticipate needs. I think older folks don't always say what they need because they're afraid that they might be perceived as needy or, infirmed or whatnot. But I think as younger folks, we need to be looking at, do they need, our social support? Do they need us to come and spend time with them? Do they need us to open a door because they're having trouble, having the strength to open that door? Just things like that maybe we don't think of as younger people being an obstacle, but maybe an obstacle for someone who's older.
So as children, we're told to honor our father and mother. How do we do that? Okay. Taking care of them.
Obedience.
Obedience.
At a younger age.
Yeah. What else? Norm?
Language has a lot to do with it at times when Ray and I were growing up. Yes sir, yes ma'am. I think you had that experience too. Some cultures, like the Korean culture, literally their language it's embedded in their language. The honorifics, even if you're a day older than somebody else, you get the honorific, and you have to allow somebody to speak informally to you. And we've lost that to a great extent here because we want to be buddy. With all, we're just on one big group of happy friends partying through life.
So if you're even one day older, you're still older, right?
Yep.
Okay. Close, did you hear that? So what he just said is one of the things that I have been thinking about. And I think that it's one, how you talk to them, but two, it's how you talk about them. Because as Lord willing, we are doing our part as children in taking care of our parents, taking care of those that are older, maybe even our grandparents. How do we talk about that around our children? How do we talk about that around other Christians? Do we go around talking about, woe is me? How horrible of a life do I have that I have to take care of these old people? And you're talking about your own parents, or you're talking about someone elderly in the church? So we honor them a great deal by never even being around them, just how we talk about them to other people. And do we talk about them in a respectful way to other people? And that's a huge way that I think that we should be showing honor. And yes, I hope that at least within the church that we're still instilling within our children this yes sir and yes ma'am and no sir and no ma'am. Norm?
Embedded in God's organization, just in how with the elders, over the congregation, the father and the mother and the raising of the children, all of these things, it's embedded in God's design of the family and in society in general, and of course in the church also.
All right, so let's go on to talking about some of the trials and temptations of the sunset years. So first it talks about the infirmity of the body. Lena, if you'll go ahead and pick up Ecclesiastes 12, 1 through 5.
Remember now thy Creator in the days of thy youth, while the evil days come not, nor the years draw nigh, when thou shalt say, I have no pleasure in them. While the sun, the light, or the moon, or the stars be not darkened, nor the clouds return after the rain. In the day when the keepers of the house shall tremble, and the strong men shall bow themselves, and the grinders cease, because they're few, and those that look out of the windows be darkened. And the doors shall be shut in the streets, when the sounds of the grinding is low, and he shall rise up at the voice of the bird, and all the daughters of music shall be brought low. Also, when they shall be afraid of that which is high, and fears shall be in the way, and the almond tree shall flourish, and the grasshopper shall be a burden, and desire shall fail, because man goes to his lone home, and the mourners go about the streets.
So what's this talking about? What's that? The breakdown of the body. So as we get older and as our bodies get more and more use, they break down. And it's talking about various parts of the body that are breaking down. One of the commentators that I was looking at was talking about the four parts, specifically the four parts of the body that were being alluded to here: the arms, the legs, the teeth, and the eyes. And you throw in the middle of all that the back. And all of these things are going to start wearing down. And as they wear down, what happens?
Not insufficient, painful even sometimes.
Right. So you can't do the things that you used to do. Does that feel good? No. I mean, when you get to that point where this used to be so easy. This used to be such a simple task. And now, maybe I can complete it, but boy, is there a lot of pain. And then eventually it gets to the point where I can't even complete this task. And so, obviously, we recognize the trial of that, but what could be the temptation of that?
Because you lose confidence on the daily for just the simplest task. Yeah, so your physical body, as it is decaying, and when you can't do these things that you used to be able to do, it affects your mind because you start getting down on yourself and you start getting depressed. Then it can have an effect on your spiritual health as well, because you start getting so down that you're not doing the things that you normally would do and should do, and you haven't been able to come to grips with where you're at and recognize the things that you can still do. And we'll talk about that a little bit more in just a little bit. But all of those things just go together to where it becomes very trying as you get older. Did I see another hand? Ray?
Another thing, too, you begin to forget things too. And that's when it really starts working on you.
Yeah. Yeah, that aspect of working on your mind. And I mean, it's troublesome, I'm sure, whenever you get to this point where you remember something a certain way and you're pretty certain that this is the way that it was. And for those that are still younger, to me, that's even a trial when you're working with those that are older and you're trying to still show them honor and be respectful. and you know that they're not remembering that correctly, it's probably not the best thing just to shove it right in their face. That's one way to continue to be respectful or to show honor. Let's move on to the next one. So the danger of forsaking the Lord. Marissa, if you'll read 1 Kings 11, verse 4.
For when Solomon was old, his wives turned away his heart after other gods, and his heart was not wholly true to the Lord his God, as was the heart of David his father.
All right, so here we have a specific example of Solomon. Obviously, whenever he was old, he had a lot of temptations around him, a lot of influence from all of his wives that eventually turned his heart away from God. But what are some other dangers outside of what we've just talked about with the infirmities maybe that you feel that can cause us to possibly forsake the Lord because we have gotten older? Norm?
Well, sometimes it's because of the infirmities, it's just easier, less painful, less of a bother to begin to stay home, and then it starts becoming a habit. You get into depressed or just distressed. It's stressing you out in those situations. So your attitude starts, lagging, and sometimes people, treat you the way they used to, and where maybe you need a little additional support, encouragement, and stuff, because you used to be strong, and they don't see the weakness coming on there, and sometimes it's too late by the time they've already fallen to the place where they can't get up again.
Yeah, one of the things that I was thinking about is you have less of a desire to push through some of these things because it could be a situation where if both the husband and the wife are still alive, well, the kids have gone, there's nobody else at the house, so you're not trying to, in your mind, maybe set a good example for your kids because they're gone, they're grown, right? They have their own kids. And so you're thinking, well, nobody really cares anyways, so I'm not really feeling that great, so why couldn't I just stay here? And that can just grow worse and worse and worse. Robert?
I had a great-grandfather who, as he got older in his age, took the attitude of, well, speaking about working in the church, he literally said, well, I've done my time. It's time for the younger men to take over. I think kind of that's what's been talking about is, as we get older, we have that inclination to say, well, I can let somebody else do it, somebody who has maybe more zeal, more energy, when really, we've already talked about it, the opposite is what we're told, and it's that wisdom is supposed to be used as a father figure. It's to help younger men grow, and the same goes towards women. Older women are told to teach the younger. It's a dangerous road to let ourselves, no matter what age we are, say, well, the younger man can do the job better or can do it more than I can.
Jeff? To me, that ties right back into what I was talking about, this American culture. There's two concepts that are constant and pervasive in everywhere we look, and that's vacation and retirement. And neither one of those concepts is taught in the Bible. They're just not taught. God doesn't talk about vacations and retirement. But the world does, that we're surrounded with every day. That's the goals, right? You've got to work to where you can retire and have a life of ease. That's Satan talking right there.
Yeah, I don't remember if it was in this section or it was another section that actually talked about, maybe it was just something else I read, talking about retirement from becoming a Christian, or a vacation from the Lord or something. It may have been in this lesson. Jesse?
So I spent, 21 years in that skewed demographic of retired people. And sure, there were some that were just ever busy and thought, now that I have time, I do want to serve and I do want to engage. But you had the people on the other end of the spectrum too that, like you said a minute ago, I served my time and I did what I had to do, and it's all about me now. And and that's definitely a challenge you have to address, because there's no retirement, spiritually speaking, for sure.
And I think it was in the lesson it talked about too, you've got a lot more time on your hands, idle time possibly, which obviously idle hands, the devil makes work of those pretty well. The next one is loneliness. Who are we up to? Lauren, can you read Isaiah 41:10? And then Michael, if you'll get 1 Peter 5:7.
41:10.
Yep. Yes, please.
Fear not, for I am with you. Be not dismayed, for I am your God. I will strengthen you. I will help you. I will uphold you with my righteous right hand.
Mike.
1 Peter 5:7. Casting all your care upon him, for he cares for you.
So I couldn't help but when I was going through this, thinking about our Psalms class, and we may be in a situation where we feel like we're the only ones at all, and sometimes we might even feel like God has forsaken us, but we know that God hasn't forsaken us, and His expectation is that we're going to come to Him and lay our hearts upon Him. I liked what he said, Brother Adam said in the book in regards to this. He says, the feeling of being neglected, whether real or imagined, can sour the spirit. This becomes the bane of many older people and of those who care for them. While you have time on your hands, younger ones are as busy with life as you used to be. Do you remember when you were younger? How much time did you spend with lonely older people? Are you accessible? Or does your manner intimidate others and cause them to back off? So while I agree with what he's saying, but just because you, when you were younger, didn't necessarily spend a whole lot of time with the older people, doesn't mean that those that are older shouldn't be spending, or I'm sorry, those that are younger shouldn't be spending more time with the older. But also with that being said, it does go both ways. And so you can't have this expectation that somebody's going to be there constantly just because you want somebody to be there, when you have to recognize that those that are younger still have families that they are trying to raise. But I think a big part of this to me is we're talking about being open with God, but we need to be open with each other. And if you're in a situation where you are feeling extra vulnerable and extra lonely, as brothers and sisters in Christ, we should have this connection where we can know these things, but none of us are mind readers. And it's hard sometimes to know exactly what each other needs. And so we have to be more vulnerable and open with each other. And so if you are that way, then be open about that. Robert?
Going to what you just said, you said the word connection. When I was living in Florida and I was worshiping at North Boulevard, the guy that preached there, one of the things he talked about quite a bit was not neglecting the older people and the wisdom we can gain from them. And he challenged the whole group of college, because there was like 30-something of us there. He said, I don't want to see a single one of you sit by another college kid tonight. This was Sunday morning, and so Sunday night our challenge was to sit next to an older person. And I sat down, we've heard his name here in this class, I sat down next to Mr. Arnold Schnabel. He was a member there, was still alive at the time, and I became friends with Mr. Schnabel, and I became, close to him in the fact of, if we don't put the effort out, and it goes both ways with the elderly towards young people and young people towards the elderly, it's just like any other connection in this building with one another. They don't happen because we sit in proximity, they happen because we put in the work and the time to step outside your pew donut of the people you can touch and talk to them and get to know them and build that relationship, so that in somebody's age or even in their youth, if they're feeling lonely, they feel comfortable to reach to somebody.
All right, the last one here in this this heading is insensitivity. So Matthew 7:12, that's the golden rule. What's it say? Oh, it doesn't say that when you get older you don't have to abide by that? Okay, this is just a biblical principle. There's no age attributed to it. And so this is something that I think as we get older, we have to be careful of. I mean, I've admitted, even me, I have to be careful of being insensitive to these young kids that I already want to yell at them and tell them to get off my lawn. So we have to be careful about becoming and growing more insensitive. So the next category, let me see. We've only got like 7 minutes. So these are a couple more that I had thrown in there. The loss of independence to me is a big one, and one that I hear about quite a bit. And I can see how that would be troublesome, like we've already talked about, where you used to be able to do all of these things and now you can't. or when you got your family stepping up and saying, look, you can't drive anymore. And of course, they're doing it for the safety of everybody, but that's a hard thing for both sides. It's hard for the parent, it's hard for the kid. So that is something that is definitely difficult. And another one that I was thinking about is the loss of purpose. You know, we feel like, well, what can I do? Look how old I am. What can I do? And so we feel like I don't really have as big of a purpose anymore within the church. And so we start feeling down on ourselves because of that. So the next one, the aged can bear fruit for the Lord. So Psalm 92, 12 through 15. Brent, you already got one. Miss Francis, if you'll get that. Psalm 92, 12 through 15.
The righteous shall flourish like a palm tree, he shall grow like a cedar in Lebanon. Those who are planted in the house of the Lord shall flourish in the courts of our God. They shall still bear fruit in old age, they shall be fresh and flourishing, to declare that the Lord is upright. He is my rock, and there is no unrighteousness in him.
All right, so we all know the story, too, of Rehoboam, how he obviously he listened to the advice of the older, and then he listened to the advice of the younger, and he ended up heeding the advice of the younger, but he should have obviously heeded the counsel of the old ones, and we know that because of that, we had 12 tribes now turning into 10 that he was, turning into 2 that he would lead. Titus chapter 2 talks about the responsibility of the older men and the older women, and so that is something that Norm was talking about earlier, how it's not very good if you've got all of this wisdom, this experience, and you just keep it to yourself. And so the expectation is, God's expectation is that those that are older are going to be teaching, are going to be training those that are younger. And so you have to maintain that mentality that you still have a purpose, that you still have value in serving the church in that regard, because that's what God expects of you. Question number 5 in regards to this, I'm going to skip through this, get to question number 5. Discuss ways in which older Christians can be of service to the Lord. Because I think this is a big one, where if we feel like we're starting to lose purpose, then what are some specific ways that we can be of service to the Lord? Miss Shirley?
Well, you can attend all the services for one thing.
Okay.
And you can show that you're still studying God's Word.
Okay. So what's one of the benefits of doing both of those things, outside of the benefit of your own soul?
Talk to people about God and the Bible.
Okay. Influence. It being an example, being encouragement to those that are younger. Because when you know that Miss Shirley and Mr. Ray are not feeling 100%, and yet they're here at practically every service, and if you look at their Bible class book and you see that they've got their questions answered, and you know that they're doing their Bible lessons and they're continuing to study, for those of us that are younger, that's encouraging. And that should influence us to want to be like them whenever we get older. See, I didn't say old. Norm?
Revelation, a lot of first few chapters talks a lot about be faithful until death. And so seeing elderly people who are exhibiting this great spiritual strength, even with all of those physical infirmities that are going on, that is the epitome of what that command is for.
And I think that too many congregations are lacking of this, and Brother Adams alludes to this on page 69, the top of the page. He says, many congregations have suffered for lack of older members to lead the way. Many churches have been without adequate leadership because older members retire and move to warmer climates to fish, play golf, or putter in gardens, or to attempt to go back home after being away for 30 or 40 years. This creates a gap in leadership in churches which needs a good mix of ages, including older and experienced elders, deacons, and teachers, May I ask a question? What is the retirement age in the kingdom of God? So it was here in this. So yeah, there is no retirement age, and this is the expectation. And so you still have a responsibility to be that influence, to be that example. And we can see that in Philippians 3, verse 17. So passing the baton, and that may sound kind of cruel when I first read that, but then I was reading what somebody was saying in regards to this, and he said, in a spiritual sense, passing the baton isn't about removing ourselves from the picture or becoming irrelevant. It's about equipping the runners ahead of us to run their race, running in sync with them as we prepare them for the day when our portion of the race is finished. You won't be here forever, neither will the experiences, lessons, and insights you've gained during your lifetime, unless you pass them on. That's your baton. That's the gift you can hand to the runner in front of you. And Paul was doing that very thing with Timothy. He knew my race is run. I fought the good fight. He was trying to hand the baton off to Timothy as he runs alongside him until his final days. A couple other ones that I think that I just wanted to mention, because we've got so many within the congregation here that do such a good job of this very thing. They do a lot better job than those of us that are younger. And so this is one way that you can continue to serve the Lord, and it doesn't go unnoticed, but just simply calling people and checking on them, sending cards, visits, making them food. And I put staying engaged with the younger. I was thinking Bill and Penny last week with having the younger kids over. I mean, the younger kids love that. And I just know from experience that's going to help keep Mr. Bill and Miss Penny young when you continue that engagement with the younger. But we have such a good group that still does these things even as they are getting older, and I'm very thankful for that. All right, thanks everybody. Didn't get nearly as far as what I wanted to, but hey, it takes a while getting old. It takes a long time talking about it too.